Okay, so now we can talk about Jupiter. And Jupiter's key word is guidance. Jupiter gives the guidance by which we can use our energy in ways which are actually helpful and not self-destructive. So Jupiter is the best force for saving Mars from becoming destructive. Mars gives energy, Jupiter gives guidance how to use that energy. So all things related to guidance pertain to Jupiter. Knowledge is a key aspect pertaining to Jupiter, because by having knowledge, we have good guidance in life. Things which give knowledge all belong to Jupiter. So for example, all sorts of teachers, gurus, guides, advisors, counselors, those are all Jupiter. People giving us guidance. Things which give us guidance as well, like philosophy, religion, ethics, moral systems, those all belong to Jupiter. And then, all the types of faith that people have in religions and philosophies and whatnot is a derivative of Jupiter's domain. So guidance, sources of guidance, people who give guidance, things which give guidance, components of guidance, faith in the guides, these all belong to Jupiter. Interesting, other things belong to Jupiter as well. Happiness, growth, expansion. Why are those ascribed to Jupiter? Because happiness comes only when you know what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. When you do things right, things go well for you and you become happy and you expand and you grow and you prosper. So as a result of guidance, all these things come about. These are secondary traits of Jupiter. Jupiter's main trait is guidance, and as a result of having good guidance, one prospers and grows and expands. So now we have Saturn. Saturn is the planet of reality. And some of the components of reality are the fact that time is moving forward. It can't be stopped. And this causes grief. So these things are associated with Saturn. Time, movement of time, grief. We can't stop ourselves from getting old. We can't stop ourselves from getting sick as a result of getting old. We can't stop death. We can't stop decay. All these things belong to Saturn. These are all realities, harsh realities. Saturn has to do with strength and rigidity, because what Saturn does is he exposes the reality of everything. So Saturn, by exposing the reality, he shows the clear boundary of what it is and what it isn't. And so Saturn is associated with boundaries and limitations. And by exposing the clear limitations of things, making them well defined, you become rigid. And Saturn is about rigidity, stubbornness. Things are within certain limits and they're not outside those limits, according to Saturn. And when things have clear limits, they can be stacked together in structures. Saturn is about structure. And those structures have great strength because they're clear and they're well fit together. Saturn is about logic because he defines clearly things, defines what they are and what they're not. But all these things, structure, strength, logic, time, decay, death, they're all components of the one essential factor of Saturn, which is that he is reality itself. So now we're going to talk about Rahu and Ketu, and they're very interesting. These are planets that have no shape in space. And again, this is what I started the show about. We're talking about not astronomical planets, but astrological planets. So the sun is included, the moon is included, even though they're not planets. But now we have two other planets, Rahu and Ketu, that many of you may have never even heard before. They are the points in the sky which create eclipses, solar and lunar eclipses. So they're very, very, very mysterious points in space. And they're very important, extremely important in Vedic astrology. So what are Rahu and Ketu? What do they represent? They represent chaos, mystery, the unknown. They're two parts of the same planet. Rahu is the northern point where the eclipses happen, and Ketu is the southern point where they happen. So they're two opposite points in the sky. They're actually one being spread in two places, exactly 180 degrees apart from each other. And so they have the same meaning, but in opposite directions. Both of them are chaos and change and transformation. This is their key word, chaotic transformation. But Rahu's transformation is centered on transforming external things. And Ketu's transformation is centered on transforming internal things. And this simple explanation will reveal so many things to you about these two planets if you simply contemplate it deeply. Rahu is the revolution. People who are conservative and cultures which are conservative hate Rahu. They cannot cope with Rahu. Rahu is always described in mythology as a serpent or a dragon, and so you can see immediately springing to your mind so many negative images of serpents in the Garden of Eden, and serpents, all kinds of forked tongues and whatnot. People who cannot handle change and transformation always make Rahu out to be very, very evil and bad. But Rahu is no more evil or bad than you or I. Nothing is evil or bad. Everything in this universe is good, because God created the universe and God is not evil. So Rahu is simply a force which makes things change, makes things actually happen. Things would never ever happen if it wasn't for Rahu pushing them. Rahu pushes everything to change. So when you see someone in life suddenly go through a change, where they change their external life dramatically because of something they felt inside, that's Rahu. So now let's talk about Ketu. Everything that Rahu is in terms of creating an external disturbance, Ketu is in terms of creating an internal disturbance. Ketu takes everything in this world and makes it seem useless. It makes it seem completely empty and pulls all of our energy only within ourselves. And so very drastic things can result from Ketu. People can become extremely depressed. People can see the whole world as useless, and they can take to a fantasy, escaping into fantasies created by drugs, alcohol, intoxication, or just their wild imagination. Or, if Ketu is getting some good help in their chart, Ketu can also be the symbol of actual spiritual liberation, because people can see the world as a collection of illusions and pull themselves, revolutionize themselves internally into making their inner self transform wildly by the power of Ketu into a new level of being, a spiritual enlightenment. And so Rahu causes external material changes based on what's inside, whereas Ketu causes internal revolutions and changes based on negating what's outside. So in the end, I want to leave you with the keywords for each planet. The sun is the center of all things, and the moon is the reflection of ourself upon the external world. Mercury is the bridge between what's inside and what's outside. Venus is the senses by which we can interact with the world. Mars is the ambition, the energy that we have to act here in this world. Jupiter is our guidance, and Saturn is our ability to embrace reality. Rahu allows us to progress, coming more and more external, and Ketu allows us to progress, becoming more and more internal. And so these 9 catchphrases for the 9 astrological planets should be fairly easy for you to commit to memory, and having done so, you'll be able to make sense out of all the different facts about what pertains to which planet, and you'll be able to, I hope, understand things on a good intuitive level.